We are seeing these manipulation happen on social media across countries more and more ever since the 2016 elections. I mean, how are the tactics of these bots evolving?
So whereas before we saw a lot of very basic automated accounts on social media being used to amplify likes or retweets, now we're actually seeing bots being used to amplify attacks, targeting, harassment of journalists, women. And this isn't just happening in the United States, this is happening all around the world and you know, arguably has been happening for quite some time.
And now there were reports that Jamal Khashoggi was just one of many influential voices that was targeted by this Saudi Arabian government-sponsored troll farm. What do you make of that, and how widespread are these state-sponsored troll farms?
That's right. We've actually found that the state-sponsored trolling sort of spreads all around the world. Governments from Turkey to Saudi Arabia, but also within South America and Southeast Asia are making use of state-sponsored trolling as a mechanism to silence dissent, to target journalists, basically to stop people reporting. And it's a real strike to democracy when basically Twitter and Facebook, which were heralded as platforms for free speech, are now being co-opted by governments for control.
And how would you contrast the strategies that these different nation states are using? Are they learning from each other?
Yeah, we've found that to some degree the nations are learning from one another. Oftentimes what will happen is 10,000 or 15,000 accounts on a site like Twitter will be used to simultaneously attack multiple journalists, to threaten them, to harass them. But also a lot of the time these accounts are also used to attack activists, to attack political opposition, and even to do transnational political attacks against news media and other organizations.
Now, Twitter's been releasing data that it's challenging millions of potentially spam or malicious accounts every week, and we know that it's one thing to identify clearly, machine-driven automated accounts, but what happens when you mix human interference with that? Can Twitter accurately find all of the manipulation?
It's a real challenge Twitter and other social media companies face to track automation and to track human-driven propaganda. Oftentimes the most sophisticated propaganda comes from cyborg accounts. They use automation to reach out to people to amplify the attacks, and then people add that element of sentiment of really targeted harassment. But that said, the companies Twitter has had since the mid-2000s to try to combat this problem, and it's existed well before 2016. It's a problem that should have been in hand a long time ago.
We know Twitter is shifting resources to this problem. Jack Dorsey has said his #1 priority is healthy conversation on the platform, and Facebook is hiring thousands upon thousands of content moderators. But what more should these companies be doing to actually address this problem?
Sure. There should be flagging of automated accounts. So any accounts that make use of automation, especially for political purposes, should be known to the user. There needs to be more curation of harmful accounts. They've got to keep deleting accounts, and they've got to look beyond the United States. It wasn't until 2016 that the companies really began paying attention to this problem. But this problem has existed around the world, especially in authoritarian countries, for a long time. So it's time for them to start doing some real cleaning of the house.
And how are the regimes evolving their tactics to deal with the new and changing stricter regulations for Twitter and Facebook involving automated accounts and manipulation?
Yeah, in my research and in my conversations with people who make and build this technology, bot-making technology, they often say that they're one step ahead of the social media companies, and I think this remains true. The bots that we see now being used to proliferate propaganda attacks or harassment are much more sophisticated than they used to be. One of the things that's happening is the advent and use of headless browsing bots, which don't log in through the API, through the back end of a site like Twitter. They actually log in through the homepage, and so the detection algorithm on a site like Twitter has a really hard time finding them, and so the companies really have a bit of a mess on their hands.
And Twitter finally released this comprehensive data set of accounts potentially linked to the Iranian and Russian government. I mean, what were your biggest takeaways from that gigantic data dump?
I think it's really good that the company is working to release this kind of information. I think that they need to continue this work. They need to focus internationally. They need to not just be releasing information on the Russians or the Iranians and their influence on American politics, but they need to be looking into the ways that this has happened in countries like Myanmar and throughout the West and throughout the world, really.